We're talking about a little bit of a different topic today, and something that's actually near and dear to my heart as someone who grew up in a church and had many older mentors. And the topic is the practices and qualities that give adults influence with the young. Now, Dr. Ross, I've heard many adults say that they just don't think they can connect with today's teens or children. What makes adults so skeptical and apprehensive about this?
Well, there are several factors. One thing that I think makes adults nervous about connecting with young people is the rapidity of change in the culture. The parents, the adults look at the world teenagers live in and they go, oh my goodness, I can't possibly comprehend all that, especially on technology. The adults feel clueless sometimes compared with what the young people are doing. And so from that, they would say, well, if I can't understand their technology, if I can't understand their entertainment, if I can't understand their gaming, then maybe I just can't have a connection with them. Another issue is, bless their hearts, sometimes teenagers don't give you much feedback when you are connecting with them. Sometimes you get rolling eyes or yawns. Actually, those of us that really know and understand teenagers know they're absorbing, they're learning, they're changing, even when their faces don't show it. But an adult that doesn't know that can be put off by that, and they can walk away saying, well, that didn't go well, and so they just leave feeling, I'm really not very important to young people. But actually, that's usually not the case.
You mentioned that idea that they may not feel connected to change or where the culture is. How important is it for them to understand where things are culturally, or is that even important at all?
You know, the teenagers, what they are really interested in is the person, the thinking, the attitudes, the knowledge an adult has about life. They're not expecting or demanding that adults understand their world. In fact, an adult that tries too hard to be cool and hip and I understand everything I think teenagers are a little put off by that. In fact, I think they think it's silly. I would say to adults, the best you can. It would be interesting to study youth culture, understand things from a teenager's point of view, but don't think you have to be an expert on that to be important to a teenager. It's the heart issue that matters far more to the teenager than that.
That's really good and powerful. Now, Dr. Ross, I know that you've developed 5 practices and qualities that help with this. Can you share some of those practices with our listeners?
Well, I want to give credit where credit is due. I have been influenced greatly by a research organization called Springtide Research Institute. Dr. Josh Picard, others on that team have done some wonderful research with young people. They have seen in their research 5 qualities that float to the top as really being significant in whether or not an adult becomes important to a teenager. What I've done in my life, my ministry, my speaking, my writing, I have taken that research, those 5 factors, and I've looked at them in a uniquely Christian context, and I'm discovering that the principles are really helpful with not only parents, but any adult that's hoping to be significant to a teenager. Very briefly, I would just state them this way. The first one is that the adults listen carefully. Everybody's moving fast today. A teenager may run across a lot of adults that says, hello, how are you? I'm gone, I'm out of here. It impresses a teenager when an adult will stand still and actually listen to them, actually pay attention to what they're saying, who will ask engaging questions that allows a teenager to talk even more. That adult is going to be important to a teenager. Also, these would be adults that are transparent about their own lives. Gone are the days that teenagers are impressed by somebody that tries to appear perfect. They're drawn toward an adult who would say, hey, I struggle at times too. I stumble over things in my life too, and this is how God picks me up. That authenticity, that transparency makes an adult more important to a teenager, and that teenager actually will pay more attention to that particular adult. Another example or another principle is these are adults that show genuine concern, not manufactured, not syrupy sweet. These are adults that would say, hey, you're going through something that's really tough. I care about that. We've got to get back together and talk about this more. Who would remember a week later, I want to ask you about this thing that you're going through. You know, I really do care about that. All of these ways of communicating genuine concern, all of a sudden that adult's stock goes up and they find themselves having more influence with teenagers. Also, these would be adults that have basic integrity. Teenagers, they observe, they know what's going on in the world. Imagine how hard a time they have these days finding heroes in any part of life, politics, entertainment, sports. It just seems like about the time you start paying attention to someone, they just fall apart, and the kids know that. So when the young people find an adult that has, you might say, has their life together, who lives in integrity, who is a morally upright person, that is impressive to a teenager. Therefore, that adult has more authority. And finally, they're impressed by adults that have expertise related to the Bible. Now, I don't mean they're a professor of theology, but a person that handles Scripture well, who understands how to interpret Scripture. That's impressive to a teenager. So you put all of those five together, and I would say today, as 30 years ago, adults that relate to young people that way, they're going to have influence with young people.